They both saw up front how partisan and left wing the Justice Department was in its handling of the laws related to voting at the federal level. Another outrage, which is the talk about systemic attacks. It's the systemic attack on election integrity. I talked about Joe Biden's speech last week, where he accused those of us who support voter ID of being criminals who should be treated like the losing side or the Confederates during the Civil War. Dangerous, dangerous rhetoric. Reprehensible. And the Supreme Court issued a technical knockout type of a blow to the left's tsunami of harassing lawsuits challenging virtually every effort by any state to modestly increase the security of elections and minimize the impact of voter fraud. Attacking voter ID, modest changes to voting by mail, which I think should, practically speaking, be eliminated. But that's not good enough for the left. Even when Republicans support enshrining vote by mail changes that they complained about last year as being improper, the left then complains about that. So as you may know, Judicial Watch has been front and center trying to protect election integrity. We are the leading group, I would say privately, trying to defend the rule of law in elections. We've sued states to get states to clean up the rolls. We have a settlement with LA County in the state of California that's requiring LA County to clean up to 1.6 million names from its rolls. That's the information YouTube wanted suppressed, and the California Secretary of State wanted suppressed and censored, and YouTube censored. We've got 3 pending lawsuits, one against North Carolina, one against Pennsylvania, one against Colorado, to get them to clean up the rolls. We've defended voter ID in court. We have a lawsuit in Georgia over the way it handled the election and specific efforts to attack Trump for raising questions about the election. Now, I see there are new developments this week raising questions about votes in Fulton County and how Arizona managed its elections. All that's important. So the left, in response to all of this, is desperate to kind of try to short circuit the state's efforts, which have been ratified by the Supreme Court as legitimate and principled, to ensure election security. And the way they want to do that is by passing 1 or 2 laws, or they'll take either one, that would severely restrict states' abilities to manage their own elections and to implement security measures such as voter ID to secure people's votes. And the laws are even broader than that. I've talked about them at length, but I encourage you to look up the concerns that we and others have about the various laws, HR 1 and I think it's HR 4, SB 1 in the Senate. So the Democrats have been accelerating the efforts to push us out. The Biden speech was a part of that, and they had 2 hearings on the Hill this week, and one in the House and one in the Senate. And Judicial Watch, our attorneys testified at both hearings. So I tell you, I am, how proud, I can't tell you how proud I am of our team. And how excited I am that we're able to have the capacity, thanks to your support, and have the record of leadership, so that it is recognized that they need Judicial Watch's expertise to explain the law and principles to members of Congress as they consider this legislation. Bob Popper, who is a veteran of the Justice Department, runs our election and voting integrity law effort, and his associate, another senior attorney at Judicial Watch, Russ Noble, Russ had also been at the Justice Department. He actually enforced the laws. Bob enforced these laws. And they both saw up front how partisan and left wing the Justice Department was in its handling of the laws related to voting at the federal level. And so Bob testified over on the House, and Russ Nobile testified at the Senate. Russ testified at the House, I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And I encourage you to go and watch their testimony. Why? Because you hear me talk about stuff all the time, and I'm not nearly as smart as I don't look. And so I encourage you to go and listen to Bob's testimony and Russ's testimony, because they have legal analysis and experience that I can't hope to match. And of course, because they're so smart, they have ways of describing these issues that are intriguing and deft and enlightening, that you're just gonna want to see it. And the nice thing about the hearings is that you can fast forward to when our folks testify, so you can cut out the stuff you don't want to listen to. And some of the material that I have some of it here. I'm going to read it to you a little bit because I think it's worth sharing about what they testified about. Now, the fun part is the stuff where they answer questions. So this is from the written testimony. But this is why I'm so excited that Judicial Watch was given this opportunity to educate millions of Americans about election integrity. For instance, Bob Popper, in his notes, in his prepared remarks, said, one hears, and large news outlets dutifully report, that there is a tsunami of legislation, quote, restricting the right to vote, that states reforming their mail-in voting laws as COVID retreats are engaged in, quote, voter suppression, and that even these actions represent the, quote, new Jim Crow. These claims are preposterous. At best, they reveal a startling historical ignorance. The grandfather laws, absurd literacy tests, poll taxes, intimidation, and terroristic violence of the Jim Crow era have nothing whatsoever to do with, say, Ohio's restriction of early voting from 35 to 29 days, or with limiting same-day registration. Nor do they have anything to do with regulating absentee ballots, out-of-precinct voting, or voter ID requirements. All reasonable electoral integrity measures approved by the Carter-Baker Commission, which was a joint commission from back in the day by two Democrat, the former president, and James Baker, the big Republican poobah. At worst, these statements reveal a startling cynicism driven by a desire to inflame passions and to raise funds. Those who talk this way are being irresponsible. And Russ Nobile said, he looked at the historical evidence. And he said, Russ said, data, not pop culture nor hyperbole, from those that oppose race-neutral election integrity laws tells the true story of ballot access in America. To objectively evaluate whether racial minorities have an equal opportunity to participate in the electoral process, you must look at racial registration and turnout data. Looking at the most recent data, the opportunity to participate is exponentially better now than it was in 1965. Based on this data, it's hard to contend that Section 5 needs to be expanded as proposed in the H.R. 4 registration. By Section 5, he's referencing the Section 5 of the Voter Rights Act, which requires certain oversight over election issues, voting issues related to minorities. Current data shows that Black registration has completely rebounded, in some instances exceeds white registration rates. In fact, the data shows that 8 years after Shelby County, registration disparities in Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Louisiana, and Mississippi, all previously covered in whole or part by Section 5, which, by the way, was largely gutted by the Supreme Court because the basis for Section 5 was to police the Democrat slave states to make sure that Blacks at that time in 65 forward could vote on an equal basis as whites. So the disparities are all below the national average in these, like places like Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Louisiana, Mississippi. So the interesting thing is the disparities in California, New York, Connecticut, and Delaware and Virginia are worse. In fact, the four biggest registration disparities, where white registration most exceeds black registration, are found in Massachusetts, Wisconsin, Oregon, and Colorado, all of which President Biden won in 2020. So, and Russ went on to say in answering questions, he said, if you're looking at those issues, a place like Massachusetts is patient zero for racial disparity in voter registration. But of course, that's not what the left cares about. They want to use these laws to make it nearly impossible for any state, particularly states that have that they've been not be able to win where they think they should win, to have security measures. Why do I think they oppose security measures? I think personally because they want to be able to steal elections when necessary. And the idea, and the Supreme Court highlighted this, that you need voter fraud or proof of extensive voter fraud in order to protect against voter fraud doesn't make any sense. They said you don't have to wait for an election to be stolen in order to stop it, to put in some measures to keep it from being stolen. And as Bob pointed out in his testimony, they want us to believe that no one cheats in elections, practically speaking. Bob pointed out he confessed in a joking way he cheats in solitaire. You're playing against yourself and you still cheat. And we're not supposed to believe voter fraud is significant. And of course, if it's your vote that's being stolen, even one case of voter fraud to me is a civil rights has an issue of urgency as it relates to civil rights. So Judicial Watch is on the ball and on the march in favor of the rule of law for clean elections. We're facing a crisis. They want to undo virtually every clean election law in the country. They would under this legislation and their agenda, which goes beyond legislation because they would use the courts to do this as well. They would ban all voter ID, impose valid harvesting, undermine the very notion of election day beyond what we're already facing. And it's so bad, and I think this is a broader issue. I'm convinced the left is not only trying to undermine election security, they're just trying to end elections as we know it. They don't like campaigns. They don't like having to go before voters. So they're going to come up with a process that effectively takes the guts out of consent of the governed through elections. Well, we'll have elections that last for months. We'll have voting that counts that lasts for months. The idea that you go to vote at election day and that you're confirmed to be eligible and you're confirmed to be a citizen and your vote is taken and counted on that day, anything less than that undermines confidence that people have in elections and should be frowned upon. That's my personal view. And of course, the left doesn't want an inch, they want a mile, and anything less than a mile, they will scream about. So I encourage you again. We'll put links to Russ and Bob's testimony below, but we're on it when it comes to election integrity. I know it's a key issue. Judicial Watch has been a leader for years on it, and we will continue to lead, of course, with your support. So have a wonderful week, and I'll see you here next time on the Judicial Watch Weekly Update.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all the latest news from Judicial Watch.